Hello, everyone. I hope you are enjoying the San Antonio Black International Film Festival and the offerings that we have for this year's theme, Animation in Black. So, what I've been wanting to do is really connect animation from around the world. And so I pulled together different production companies doing great things. And so today we're gonna fly to Gambia, West Africa, to the headquarters for Fly-In Animation. And so I want to bring everybody into the fold. Come on, y'all, come on in, fly in with me. So, so great. So I want to first welcome everybody. I'm really glad that technology can connect us to talk and just exchange cultural connections. And so I welcome you. I want to introduce the company that we're profiling is Fly-In Productions. I'm saying Fly-In Productions, but it's Fly-In Fye with the capital N.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes. Fye-In.
What is it?
Fye-In.
Fry-In. I'm saying it American. I'm sorry. Fry-In. Fye-In. Not Fly-In, but Fye-In.
Yeah.
Fye-In. Yeah.
So our last name is Fye, Fye, and then network. So together it's Fye-In.
Fye-In. That even sounds more cooler. So I want to first introduce Rare at the top. We have Adam Fye.
Manuela.
Huh?
Oh, there you go. Yeah, it was the other way around.
There you go. And she is the co-founder and the CEO. And then we have Kahenya. Is it do your last name for me?
Kangethe. Yeah, that one's the hardest one. Kangethe.
Kangethe.
Yeah, there's no good way of saying it, to be honest. But Kahenya Kangethe.
Kahenya Kangethe. And he's the the animation project manager. Mm-hmm. And then we have Manuela, is it Mhina?
Yes, Mhina.
And the content creator and producer. So Anna Fly-In may come in. She's having some connectivity issues. So if she comes in, we'll bring her in at any point. But I want to just I want you all to and I'll jump around the room. But basically, Fly-In is a multimedia entertainment and content creation company that curates African-centered children's content. And one of the things I love about your website is that it says that you all are inviting people into the fold to experience our stories our way, experience the magic of Africa through authentic storytelling. So with that, I want to just start by first having you introduce yourselves, and then I want to just kind of hear about your journeys of how and why you started this company. So let's go ahead and start with Manuela. You're at the top there.
Yes, hi. I'm Manuela Mhina. I joined Fye-In 2 years ago, and I came on board because I'm a storyteller innately. I grew up in Tanzania, East Africa, and I wanted to really share stories with my children specifically. And I really connected with my cousins because they went through a similar journey as they were having kids. And so I came on board to help with content creation, storytelling. So I predominantly do writing and production and, just exchanging of ideas and really bringing the richness of our experiences as Africans who, grew up in Africa, but also in other parts of the world.
Mm-hmm. So tell us where you're based now. Where are you based now? And where did you go to? Did you do your schooling in the States or in Africa?
Right. So I'm based in Nairobi, Kenya. I'm originally from Tanzania, Dar es Salaam. I came here because I met my husband in university in Brighton, where I did a degree in business administration. And then we chose to settle in Kenya. Okay. I then went on to do a master's in poverty reduction policy and practice. So I'm working in the development arena. However, my passion really is storytelling. I have written books myself. I've not published, but specifically around children's stories. And so I came on board with Fye-In because I was looking for something more. aside from the work that I do, every day.
Okay. Let's I'm gonna do you, Adam, last, since you're the co-founder. But let's go ahead and go to Kahenya. Let me hear what your part in the company and what you're doing.
Sure, yeah. So I'm Kahenya Kangethe, Kahenya from Kenya. I always introduce myself like that. And I'm the animation project manager right now. I joined the company last year after sort of doing a deep dive in African animation. My background is in animation. I'm currently studying in the UK, and that's where I am now. I'm in Leeds. And I actually completely accidentally stumbled across Fye Network because I was doing research for a meeting I had with some executive, and he asked me about the African animation scene. And at the time, I was a young student, and I was like, I'm going to do animation from Kenya. And the first question he asked me was, tell me about the Kenyan animation industry. And I knew nothing. And I was like, oh, I don't know, because I've been focusing so much on, the West and all the, America and France and the UK, that I forgot that, what's happening here. And I really took a step back and I was like, actually, I didn't grow up with African animation. I've never really seen anything local. So I did this big deep dive on the internet, and on Google, page 5, I found a mention of a BBC article. So I went to the BBC article, and it was Fye Network, authentic storytelling, our stories our way. And I was like, oh, this is
bing,
exactly
bing,
what
bing,
I
bing,
need.
bing, bing,
Yeah,
bing.
oh my gosh, I need to contact these people. And I saw at the time they were doing, they tried to do like a proof of concept, TV show idea, the first African princess. It was a publishing company, but they wanted to move into animation. And I was like, I might have a chance here to jump in with my animation, experience and get in early and try to develop these African stories, because they seemed so inspirational and exactly what my vision for what I wanted to create was. So I reached out to Adam, and I was like, I don't know if you guys are doing anything. And it was so vague because I was just like, do you need any help? I'll help out. Let's do something. And then she reached out and she was like, yes, perfect. Let's meet. And I was like, okay, we met. And I remember that meeting was so just electric. We were going off each other. Yes, this is African animation, and we need to a big point of that conversation was that, I grew up with Western TV shows, and I couldn't tell you what the capital of Tanzania was. But I could tell you everything about the US. I could tell you, oh, yeah, that's 100%. There's Washington State, but there's also Washington, D.C. And why would I know that? I'm on the other side of the planet. But I couldn't tell you anything about Africa. And in terms of the books that were being written at the time, so we had Bakari on Safari, Princess Halima, Samba and Batch. It was all about normalizing being African. And I was like, yes, that's exactly what I want to do. And we took this screenshot, and I was like, I know this is this will be big. We're gonna make big moves. This is a momentous part of history. So we took that picture, and the rest is history. And then for what I did from that point was I helped develop these, because we're a publishing company, developing these these published books into series. That's what I do.
And that's one of the things I love about what y'all are doing. But also, I was scramming the internet, and that's how I found you.
Yes. Oh my God.
I'm like, oh, when you come here.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So yeah, that is a good thing about one of the advantages of the internet. And I want to get back into some things that you said that are very critical, but I want to go ahead first to Adam. Go ahead and tell us, Miss CEO and founder, co-founder and CEO.
Hi, everyone. My name is Adam Fye. I am half Gambian and half Tanzanian. So our dad is Gambian, and our mother is Tanzanian.
Oh, wow.
And we
good food, both parts, good food.
Yes. And they met in Sweden and married.
Yeah.
And then relocated back to the Gambia. So we were born and raised in the Gambia up until I think, okay, I'm gonna give my age here. I think we moved.
Go ahead, go for it, girl. Go for
to the US 25 years ago, when there was a coup in the Gambia. And so we came here as immigrants to the US. We were called the 6 refugees at the airport. I remember that.
Wow.
And we were looking around who are those refugees? What's that? And it was us. So yeah, and we've been here since. But our parents have done a really great job of making sure we were connected to back home.
That's an animated story right there.
That is true. Our dad did a really good job of maintaining our language in our home. So we all do speak our local dialect of Wolof, which is one of the Gambian tribes languages. And then our mom, we learned Swahili default because she would use that when she was mad at her 6 kids. So that's how we learned some of the Swahili. So we understand. I would say most of us understand it more than we can speak it. But we can find out if you drop us in the middle of the market in Dar es Salaam, we can probably find our way home.
So you can probably curse somebody out, huh?
Oh yes, I can. The first thing you learn in any language is the curse words. So about 15 years ago, our second oldest sister, her name is Anna, who was also a co-founder, was expecting her first child. And it was a girl, and she knew she was going to name her Halima, which is a very typical African Muslim name. So we were so excited. It was the first child any of the siblings were having. So we all ran. I remember that day we went to Barnes and Nobles in downtown Silver Spring because we grew up in Maryland. And we went to the Barnes and Nobles. We're like, oh, we're going to get her books. And we went in there and we couldn't find anything. First of all, this was way before Princess Tiana. So even an idea of a Black princess didn't exist. So we were looking for books that had not only African characters, but Black characters that she could relate to. We noticed that there was nothing much there. And then when we found was African stories were written by predominantly white women. And it was coming from that white savior perspective. And it was the struggle stories. And I remember us thinking, Africa's a beautiful continent. Our stories vary and vast in all levels that you go into. And we are more than our struggles, right? That's just a part of our journey, but we are more than our struggles. And some of these stories were about, the long walk to school and walking barefooted and walking miles. And I was like, yes, that's a part of our story. And it's so important because some of us generationally have experienced that. And we've heard those stories from our grandfathers. But where's the stories of what people are experiencing now and how people are living now in that mixture, right? So we went, we were disappointed. And I remember our mom took us on a trip to Ethiopia because at the time she was working with the African Development Bank. And I was, how old was I? Okay, this was okay. So I was like a year shy of graduating college. So we went, and it was my sisters, and she had her daughter at that time, Halima, and she was running around, and we were and Ethiopia is a beautiful country.
Yeah,
the landscape is, oh my God, it was so inspiring. We went on the mountain hike. And it was just beautiful. And so we told my mom how we had always wanted to write the story of this beautiful African princess called Princess Halima. And my mom was like, write it. And so then we got on her bed and grabbed the laptop. And then Sister Jay grabbed the laptop, and we were just spewing ideas, like just telling the story. And it was lengthy and long, and it was exciting. And we wrote the story. And Halima, we read it to her, and everyone loved it. And then my mom was like, well, you should, pitch this to publishing. So we started pitching, and the rejections started mounting. As you know, in the publishing industry, about 82%, I think approximately, are employees are of white women.
So you started sending it to traditional publishing companies?
Traditional publishing companies, submitting letters of inquiry, doing our submissions. And a lot of the gatekeepers were coming back to us and saying, we're not interested in this. What is this story about? Like, who cares about Africa? Who cares about Africa, right? That industry can be quite subjective. It's on the individual to engage and resonate with the story submitted, and then they take it and run with it. And, so I like to say we were before our time. Like, now it's diversity, yay, stories from around the world. But 15 years ago, that was not something that people were open to. So we did feel defeated, and our mom just was like, you know what, do it yourself. And we were like, what? And she was like, do it yourself. So there's such thing as self-publishing. And I was like, oh. So then we hunkered down. We learned what the self-publishing world was about. And she's been our greatest supporter, and she financed it. She financed it all. So she's been our angel investor since. So for the last 15 years, honestly, when we're like, oh, we have a great idea, we just look at her like, hey, mom, here's this idea that we have. What do you think? And then, it's amazing because she believes in our passion for it and in our dream for it. And even though it's been a long 15-year journey and we're still on that journey to success, she still keeps believing us, still investing in us. So that's really how Fye started. It was the Princess Halima story. So we published it and we were reading it to her as a bedtime story. And then people started asking, hey, I want this. The African princess. We were like, oh, there's a market here. So we started doing some research as well. Realized there was nothing that existed at that time for these characters, especially African-centered characters. Mm-hmm. And so that's how Fye came about. So Fye our last name is Fye. And we're Gambians. And actually back home, there's a tradition where family last names get nicknames. And so our family nickname is actually the Fye. So if you go to Gambia and you're like, where are the Fyens? They'll be like, oh, which one? The ones that were born in Lancaster, Banjul, or these other ones that are born. So everyone, it's very rooted in like, everyone knows the family names from where they are. Like if there's a Njai, it's in Jayen, right? So there's that connection that people have to last names. So because our last name is known as Fye, so we were brainstorming. We were like, so what does that look like when we bring that to life, Fye? So then Fye Network came. So we're honoring our heritage and our legacy and our dad's last name and carrying it on to the business name.
Yes.
So that's how Fye came about, Fye Network. And the reason why we named it Fye Network because we do want it to be this network that connects all these different stories across the continent, right? Mm-hmm. Not just in the publishing world, but we have big dreams. Publishing, animation, merchandising, you name it all. Yeah. We're trying to be literally what I call our internal motto is like, we want to be the Disney of Africa, right? We want to be something that pushes out content that's African-centered for kids. And then just to add here is that, in our African cultures where we grow up, it's African kids are typically ignored. We ignore the kids. We tell them to be seen, not heard. We kind of center our lives around adults and just go to school, come home and do your homework. And that's it, right? And do your chores. The content for kids is quite limited. From books to even just TV productions. And if we do have books and TV productions, we're consuming Western TV productions, right? Like Kahenya said, you ask an African kid, where's Washington, D.C. and who's LeBron James and all these things, they'll tell you, but you ask them, what's the city of, what's the capital city of Tanzania, which is Dodoma now, or what's the capital city of Ghana, which is Accra.
Or just to fill out a map of Africa with the countries. Because people don't even look at Africa as a country. They look at it as just Africa. And it's like,
it's an experience both in the diaspora and also on the continent, right? So the disconnect also happens on the continent where we're taught Western history and Western knowledge rather than our own history, right? So if you walked up to a kid and asked them, who's Sir Ellen Johnson? They'd be like, I don't know. Who's Kofi Annan, right? Or I always butcher his name, so I try not to say it, but the liberator of Ghana.
Kwame Nkrumah.
I always put his names like but these are things that we're not taught back home. But also we don't have stories that we can resonate with, right? Like my sisters grew up on a series called Peter and Jane. And in the book, this is what they were reading in school, called Peter and Jane. And
Peter and wait a minute. We grew up with John Dick, C Dick Run, C Spot Run.
Exactly.
Y'all had that too?
We had that too, and it was two white kids, doing very, very Western things. Having a dog in the house, like to an African, that's like, wait, what? Like dogs in Africa don't go in the house, much less get on the couch, get on the bed, or lick someone's face. Like that's so not our experience. So people were like, what is this, right? So books that don't resonate to our culture and our experiences. So when we started our journey to now where we have Princess Halima, which is what spun things off for us. And then so Princess Halima's mission is essentially to visit all 54 African countries and have a book for each of these countries and tell the cultural, traditional stories of our people in a way that is captivating and innovative and beautiful, and it's not centered around our struggles, right?
That is an awesome mission to visit every African country.
Thank you. Yeah, and capture the beauty of the people and the culture and traditions. So that's her mission. And then we have our second book series, which is Bakari on Safari. Safari technically means travel, trip, right? In Swahili. So Bakari, and in Americans will say Bakari. West Africans will say Bakari. And then the East Africans will say Bakari. So it's it's different, but the name resonates.
And then in America, it's just Bakari. It
Bakari
doesn't sound interesting at all. I like
that. No. But I love the fact that it's a name that's been picked up out here. Americans have really actually engulf themselves in the Swahili culture, which is beautiful. So Bakari is actually on a mission to teach people about African national parks. So we have more than 100 national parks across the continent. I think each country has at least one. The one with the most number of national parks is actually Kenya, which has about 24 national parks and nature reserves. So he's on a mission to teach people about our national parks, and each of them have such vastly different landscape and stories and animals, and it's truly beautiful. So that's Bakari's mission. And then we have our third book series, third portfolio, which is Samba and Butch. Now, in these names come from Gambia, where actually it's one person's name. When you meet a Samba, their name is usually Samba Butch. So we took that name, and made it to Samba and Butch, because the story is of two African boys, best friends, that live in this mystical Sahara desert in Africa. And they are just your typical boys who are experiencing life as any typical African would. And the lessons that they learn as they go through those journeys as toddlers, right? Listening to your parents and being respectful and saying thank you and things like that. So they go through these journeys in this African magical world where, instead of a dog running into their house, they're sitting under a mango tree and climbing the mango and eating the mangoes, and the mangoes dripping down your elbows. And that's our story, right? Like we all have a story where we were either climbing our own mango trees or climbing the neighbor's mango tree because they had the good mango, and like coming down and eating it. And we even eat the skin. Like here, people don't understand.
We don't eat the skin,
we eat the skin all the way to the core. And if you see a core of a mango after a child has eaten it, and the hair sticking up and it's like literally dried out, like that's our authentic stories. So that's what Samba and Butch is trying to do, is try to tell the toddler story as well. So our content tends to actually skew to 12 and under, because that's actually the largely ignored group in our cultures. And you'll see that even today, now that African content, African animation is picking up steam, a lot of the content is still geared towards 15 and up. Like I said, we still tend to ignore that 15 and under group. And, like Kahenya likes to say, African population is actually skewing largely young. I think 50% of our populations are actually 15 and under.
But in that population, I would think that you're still wrestling with what Kahenya wrestled with, which is not knowing what's right in your backyard, not knowing about what's right in your backyard. You're still wrestling with your focus, trying to be West instead of really grasping these authentic stories that connect them to their African heritage. So, I mean, that is, I would think, a real struggle. I mean, for you all in the publishing and in the animation world, trying to get them to look at your stuff. Is that a struggle that you're contending with now? And how are you getting our plans to get your content so that it's not only in Africa, in different parts of Africa, but I think it's important to have it here too, because there's such a disconnect. I mean, you all talk about tribes in Africa. There's tribes in America, but the tribes break down into AKA, Delta. You know what I'm saying? They break down to group tribes, where people are focused just on their little worlds. So, I mean, how would you think about just trying to bring it not only just to your neck of the world, but getting that here as well. As YouTube's an avenue that you're trying to go. I've seen a lot of Akili and Me, and
Yeah.
I've seen a lot on YouTube. So just talk about your plans with that, getting these authentic stories out.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't mind, I can jump on this. It's all about like decolonizing Africa, and you know, taking it away from this idea of, oh, it's the dark continent. We don't know anything about this place. It's just, oh, you know, nobody really talks about that. And even coming to the UK, like I say I'm from Kenya, and I'm like, oh, that's, you know, that's in Africa. And as soon as I start talking about the stories that I want to tell, there's like a glaze that comes over people's faces, because they just don't, either they're nervous about saying the wrong thing, but it comes from misinformation. People don't know, therefore they don't understand the significance of, you know, understanding what Africa is. And it's the same thing of like, you know, as much as we are, you know, focused on, you know, showing the world that Africa is more than just one thing. It's about showing also Africans, because, you know, the like colonial hangups of you don't want to be proud of your own culture. You know, you hear people talking about, like, when I go back home, they're like, oh, you must enjoy it so much when you're away from here. And I'm like, no, when I come back home, it's the best thing. And you'll talk to any Diasporan and they'll be like, I just want to go home. Because as soon as you leave, you understand the significance of what that is. And by focusing on showing the beauty of Africa and showing, you know, there's magic in Africa, and we're all very different. I'm from Kenya. Gambia is on the other side of the of the continent.
Right.
It's like an 8-hour flight. It would take so long. I can't, you know, when I first saw the name of Fye Network, Fye, I was like, how do I pronounce that? I don't know. But then, you know, and then you learn and you're like, oh, I understand more now. And it's not because of, like, I think because we're so focused on, like, the West is so blinding, especially in content. It's in our face. And, you know, America is very good at making things seem very glamorous. So it's such like a, you know, like a moth to the flame, that you forget these things exist. But, you know, hopefully, you know, there's two sides of it. There's, like, because of the you know, that amount of content that's up there. You mentioned YouTube. There's a lot of ways to access these things, and now everybody's, you know, because of globalization, everybody has Netflix. You know, in Africa, like, we just got Disney Plus, like, literally a few months ago. Netflix has been there for a while. Like, all these things are becoming more universal, so the platforms are becoming more accessible. And you know, things, you know, people are making more, you know, making more money. Well, okay, post COVID, but before COVID, 100%. Things are coming up, so you can start to put African stories alongside all these Western things. So, you know, Kenya, huge Netflix boom. Like, there's a bunch of Netflix execs who are coming up in Kenya who are now putting things on the platform. And speaking of YouTube, like, that's such a good avenue, because, you know, nowadays people's kids are raised on YouTube.
Akili and Me is rolling. We're gonna have them on as well.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
They are rolling with the viewers. And my grandkids introduced me to my daughter. The kids were watching Akili and Me and learning their numbers and their alphabets. And I just love that it's centered with Kenya culture, you know, and images. I love it. I love it.
It's incredible. And you can tell they found that they got the niche, and there's such a need for that information. Yeah, you're going to say something.
Yeah.
But they're doing universal things, like letters, alphabets, numbers, but it's told with images that are reflective of Kenyan culture. And so kids can really horn in on that and respect it, you know, not having hierarchy view of, oh, I'm American and this is African, and just get into it because of the music and the songs and connect with the images. So that's the sort of thing I think it needs to happen. The content. What I like about you all, you're creating mirrors and windows through your content, and that is so profound for me to be able to be doing that. So let's talk about content. So you're creating the books. Is one of the desires to bring all of the books that you're creating to the animated space? That's a big job for you, Kahenya. And then write it.
Definitely.
That's why I just smiled.
well, luckily now we plan to get help from people because now we have the attention of some people who are interested in telling more African stories, and people even within Africa are starting to notice, oh, these guys are doing something. So I'll have some help to create this content and turn it into something animated. Yeah, 100%.
Well, now there's places like Upwork, and I mean everything is virtual. Because I was talking to this guy who's going to be in our diversity panel, Pharrell, and he was just saying that they're in Canada, but their animation studios are in Ireland and Dubai. And everything is done virtual. They don't even see people. Everything is just virtual. They send it in. And so it's so doable now.
It is.
Yes, I would say yes. However, I think what we're still facing is the lack of financing.
Yeah.
Animation is an expensive industry, right? So you'll find that I feel that there's so many stories that are out there that could be told. And ours just centers the magic of Africa, right? And I love what Akili and they're doing. Like my niece, Amina, and my daughter, like they love that stuff. They watch it, and and we encourage it because that's our people, right? Mm-hmm. And when you think about it, they're coming from the continent, right? So we are quite supportive of them. And then there's also another series called Babineaux and Fino from
Nigeria. I saw that, right? Nigeria.
So I think what gets in our way the most of the time is it's knowing what doors to knock on, right? Because you can do the cold calls, you can do the cold emails, and we've done it all. But you're knocking on doors sometimes the gatekeepers don't want to open. And unfortunately, the gatekeepers don't have our same thinking and much background, right? Mm-hmm. And we all know that the gatekeepers tend to be white. So, and it's because it's subjective, because it's such a subjective industry. If the person you're knocking on a door and the person doesn't resonate with your messaging, it can be quite challenging.
Yeah. So let me just say this, because one of the things, just researching for this animation in Black, we change themes every year, but this year we decided animation. But just researching, there are African-centered, there's a sister out of Morocco who's going to be at the festival.
Moni,
there's a brother out of Georgia that's starting an animation TV. So there's potential. It's just trying to, and I will definitely work to connect you all too. But there's potential in, because everybody's trying to build. I read that animation, and I don't have the stats in front of me, but the industry is growing leaps and bounds. So as it grows, content is going to need to grow. Stories are going to need to be told, because we got to continue with keeping that diversity and equity in the pot, stirring up and making that a real thing. But the expense of animation as opposed to just publishing, I'm sure it's
huge.
Yeah. And it's convincing people that it's worth it. Yeah. That's a bigger thing, because as you're saying, animation is growing so much more. People are watching animation, and the stereotypes for animation, it's becoming more of everybody can enjoy it rather than just for children, and that's a huge shift that's happening. In the next 4 or 5 years, you're going to see that lean even more towards I'll say adult animation, but it's not like it's not explicit. It's just we respect the viewers, and that's something that's coming up. But like, convince people that it's worth it to invest in more diverse and get a bigger audience ship is really the biggest thing. And that diversity. I mean, you mentioned Pharrell. That's Pharrell Hall from
yeah.
We had a conversation with him earlier. In fact, she was the beginning of when I started with them, and his ideas of like he immediately understood that yes, this is definitely what needs to happen, because there's a whole section of animation that's being forgotten, and that's Africans and people people of color, people originating from Africa. The diaspora. There's so much more to tell, and the stories that are coming out of there are so incredible. And convince people that that's worth it is the biggest thing.
And I'll add here, and I think Manu can speak to this as a content creator here. I'm trying to make sure she gets in here. Is that when people are given the opportunities to tell these stories that are diverse, I think they are now picking on and jumping into an African space, but it's still a struggle, because what I have seen is that even for Black stories, just in general, and when I say Black, I mean the entire Black diaspora, like all of us, right? If you know how it is, if you look like us, we're considered Black in the U.S.
Yeah.
You know, when you check that box, it doesn't say Black, African, Caribbean, it says Black, right? And not all of us experience that Black experience in the U.S. What I've noticed is actually that the opportunities are given to non-people of color to tell Black stories.
Yes.
Yep.
I mean, we have Doc McStuffin. That's not. That's famous. It's a Black girl doctor. Beautiful story. It's not a white. It's a white woman. I think white man, woman who actually produces that. Right, owns it. Came up with it. Then there's a recent one that my daughter loves. It's a little. She does the lasso.
Is it Ava Twist Scientist?
No, Ava Twist. My daughter actually loves that one too. But that's actually from
that's My Story Media. That's Pharrell.
The author of those stories actually is a white woman. But it was the Obamas who took that on from their production company to bring that on to life. So you see that. But what I'm saying is the storytellers behind the stories can tend to be non-people of color,
non-African.
They get the opportunity to tell our stories and tap into it in a way where it can be authentic, but not because it's not from the voice of an African or Black person, right?
Yeah.
You see that. I remember all these stories coming out of how like some of these Black characters that we know on some of these adult cartoons are actually voiced by non-Black people, right? So it's like fighting two battles, right? You're knocking on the door to get your stories told in an authentic way, because it's our experience. You can't tell us our experience. You can't tell our experience better than we can, right? We lived it. We know what it is. And then you have the other side of it where someone is profiting off of telling our stories, and they're giving the opportunity, because obviously that industry can be quite subjective, right? Who knocks on the door and opens and the person looks like you is who you let in, rather than who knocks on the door and looks totally like different from you, speaks a totally different language, and they're talking about, Africa is magic, right? Like what is that? That's not what we're told, right? So it's like fighting two battles, multiple battles on multiple fronts for us every time.
Yes, it is.
And Manu, I'll let you jump in here.
Yeah, to add to that, we have a series here called Tinga Tinga Tales. I'm sure you've heard of it. I think it's the person behind it is also a Caucasian woman. Her name is Claudia Lloyd. And Tinga Tinga is so famous over here. We have all the books for Tinga Tinga Tales. You know, my kids have read them. And then when you find out that the person behind it is not a person of color, it surprises you and you kind of go, why is this happening? And the interesting thing is Tinga Tinga Tales itself originates from an artist in Tanzania who draws paintings in a very specific way. And the term Tinga Tinga is named after his name. I think he's passed on now, but it's a very specific way of drawing African art, whether it's landscape or animals or etc. And it's on BBC, and it's African stories being told by other people. So yes, that is definitely something that happens a lot. And I also think that specifically in the area of animation, if we are to reach a wider audience, especially on the African continent and in our African countries, it's a little bit difficult because also we have a digital divide. Not everyone has access to the internet. Not everyone has access to streaming services for different reasons, whether it's money or the infrastructure not being available. So we still rely on books being the main sort of avenue to reach the children we're trying to target. So on the one hand, yes, there's the element of fighting what Yadam was talking about, is it African people telling African stories, but also are the stories reaching the Africans that we're trying to speak to? That's the other thing that I find is a challenge that we have, and it boils down to infrastructure. So we end up finding ourselves in a space where we need to sort of break the glass ceiling in the diasporan space, because there we have an audience that can really reach the streaming platforms, can reach the YouTube and the Instagram a lot more wider, in order to now hopefully make these contents, specifically anime, available to those in less privileged as well. So there's that's the other angle I wanted to throw in. These are the things that we're facing as producers, animators. Like, okay, fine, we want to reach.
I was going to ask y'all a question about challenges, but we're talking about it actually. I mean, these are the challenges that are set before us. So what keeps you like in the fight? Like, what keeps you going? Like, I mean, you have a vision, you're trying to reach that vision, a lot of roadblocks, but the importance of what you're doing and the need for what you're doing is there. So what drives you to keep it going as a family too? Because you all are family. And you're bringing in nephews into the fold that you've extended family into the fold. Can you know? But what makes you, just like, for me, I know when someone tells me no, that's like more incentive for me to go, I'm gonna do this. So I don't know. Is that
for sure. I think honestly, I will say kudos to my dad. He plays a really big part in our life. Well, our mom is, and we always thank her because she pushes us and she's quite supportive. And she pours into our business financially. And we love that about her. Keep doing it, Mom. And our dad has always been our spiritual anchor. And from a young age, he was not your typical African dad. And trust me,
what is your typical African dad? What do you mean by that?
So we grew up in a very, 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 Gambia is like 95% Muslim, right? And religion really, but we're also, it's like we're a religious country, but things happen, we're also very westernized in some ways, right? So my dad and grew up in a time where his family pushed him for education. I mean, he studied like some weird, every time he tells me what he studied, like limnology, I'm like, what is that? Like, he was an environmentalist. Like, my dad grew up to be he's an environmentalist expert, right? Retired from the World Bank. And if you want to hear that, if you want that man to smile, call him and ask him some erosion question or something about and he will, like, you will see the light come on and he will talk to you for 2 hours and you're just like, oh my God. Like, it makes his day. Like, that's who he is. But he was also our spiritual anchor. But he taught us the religion, but he also let us fly, right? Like, I came home at 17 with my belly button pierced, right? And I remember him chasing me around the car, and he's like, "What did you do? Oh my God!" And we laughed about it, and that was it, right? So in the typical African home, that probably wouldn't have gone that way. It would have been like, "What did you do? I folks say you get," like, it would have been extreme, right? And so, and he allowed us to, and he always told us, don't be afraid to challenge authority. I remember this, even at a young age. Like, we would come home and we would sit at the dinner table and we would talk politics with him. And we were young, but we would talk politics with him, and he was very frank and open to us and about challenging authority. If you think they're doing it wrong, who cares? I don't care if it's the president. I don't care. And this is what he would tell us, right? And then he would tell us, never give up. If this is your dream and this is your passion, pursue it till your last breath, because at the end of the day, you gave it your all, and God will see that you've given it your all, and given your all, and open doors for you. So honestly, that's what keeps us fighting. And there are some days I'm just like, you know what? I don't know. And then we have our beautiful spirit, is Kahenya here, and he just, I'm so thankful to join the team.
Yeah.
And he infuses us with so much positivity.
Yeah.
And uplifts us all the time. There are some days I'm like, Kahenya, I don't know. He's like, no, we can do this. We can do this. No, turn it this left, right. Like, he's innovative. He sees things that I don't see at times, right?
Yeah.
And I love that about him, because it allows us to have a great balance on our team, where we have a content creator Manuela, and then Anna, who they're so creative, right? I send them I send them something, and I'm like, guys, this is what I'm thinking. I need you guys to run with it. And next thing I know, like they've taken this idea and they've brought it to life, right? And I'm like, Kahenya, what do you think? And then Kahenya flips it and sees this. So then it becomes this well-oiled machine of how ideas are brought out. And then, sometimes we knock on doors, like we started pitching last year. We had a situation where someone wanted to actually sign us for one of our, the Bakari Safari, but they wanted 100% ownership.
Oh. And that was a difficult one. Gosh.
We had to pray on that one, and then we had to walk away from it, right? Because it's almost like, we're knocking on the door and the door opened, but this is not what we want.
This is not what we wanted.
Yeah, we know what happens when you take it and it becomes whitewashed and it becomes something totally different than what it was, right? So walking away from that was so hard.
No, it's you know your value. You know what your treasure, what you have as a treasure. So
and our lawyer was like, I'm sorry, guys. I gotta make what is it? You wait, like just walk away at this point because they're not meeting you anywhere. So we had to walk away from that, and that was quite challenging. And then this year we've also, Kahenya has been doing such an awesome job of helping us build our show Bibles and then knocking on doors. Like I feel like our first pitch this year actually went quite. It wasn't a great, but it was such an experience. Like we can laugh about laughter. Like we had connection issues.
Yeah.
Like, it was.
But those are the hazards of. I mean, we're on 3 continents.
Yeah.
Like 4 time zones happening. But we learned a lot from that. I should say we learned a lot.
You're in a very whitewashed environment, learning animation. And really trying to progress. How do you maintain your cool when professors don't get you, or you're trying to produce something from your perspective? I mean, are there other Africans from different other areas of the continent that are with you? Because if there are, you need to be building your base.
Oh my gosh, completely. I mean, that's completely, my last year was, I was making my thesis film, Neuso. And it was all about like the black, the diaspora in the UK. And like, I've seen the connection of, coming here and trying to connect with usually people from like the Windrush generation from the Caribbean who came and settled here like, 60 years ago, and seeing, trying to, interact with them and seeing that they don't know about Africa. And like the story was about that, living here as a black person, basically. And I realized that I need to surround myself with people from Africa because of those exact things. People, they would not, you'd get the glazed looks, you'd get the like, okay, of like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, no, but this is like, we're going to go from like Kenya to like Egypt and it's going to look like this. And then they're like, yeah, okay. And I'm like, okay, but no, you need to see it. And then even like directing the team, because I brought on, storyboard artists and background designers, and they were all people from the school. So I didn't have a lot of options. So they were all from here, local, born and raised, never been outside the country. And sitting them down in like a culture meeting at the beginning and going, listen, this is what it feels like as an African person. And I'm going to try to like hold your hand and take you through. But there are like a few, there's a big culture, if you can afford it, to go out into the West and learn and go into education. So there are a lot of Kenyans in Leeds. There are a lot of, one of my very good friends here was from Egypt. And I used her so much on that film because I was just like, tell me whether I'm crazy or this is what's happening. And then she would go, yeah, this is 100% what's happening, because she understands what it's like being here. But, there's like, at the same time, there's a silver lining to that, because it's not all bad. Like, they understand that there's a magic there. They just can't articulate it. Like, it's not necessarily that like people from the UK or don't understand what it's like being African. Like, the stories are universal. It's just making it seem, it's just bringing it down and adding specificity. And we can come in and do that for them, but they still enjoy it. Like a lot of people really enjoyed the film, and when I finally released it, because it was so like it's a connection that we've all had to something else. So it's not too hard maintaining that focus to go back to that your question, because it's very human experience of being away from home, and then trying to reach back and seeing this is what it was like, and now it's different. And
one of the things is what's so important as you're growing the company and everything is just training. It's training more animators coming to the fold that are doing the stories you want to tell. It's training. But at the end of the day, anybody can animate what you draw. So it's just a matter of getting animators into the fold that will do that. I mean, like I said, Nine Story Media is doing Dubai and Ireland. Or something like Karma's World, which is a Black show that Ludacris is putting up. So there's a way to just have animators that are working. I mean, there's certain things you'll have to fight for, like the storyline. Like, you know, no, Black people do this. Black people do this. And convince them of that if they're outsiders working on Black projects. But it's a matter of getting the content created. And one of the things I want to ask is we're rolling down to the end. I can't believe this is an hour already. Wow.
Oh my gosh.
Fun to talk to.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a second.
One of the things is I want to, you know, for me, impact is very important in everything that I do. And so this whole animation and Black thing is really to show kids people that look like them, images that look like them, stories that you know, that they don't see normally. And so for young kids watching, you know, this interview now, that don't have a clue of what's involved behind the scenes of creating animation or even publishing books, but they have talent. They can draw, they can write, they can do computer, they do gaming, music. So what are some avenues or ways that they can pursue getting into the field that is traditionally one that has shut the door on people of color to tell their stories? I mean, what are some things? Because how did you like Kahenya, how did you get into animation? I mean, how would one do that coming from a country in Africa?
It's like, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's hard, especially, I mean, coming from Africa. It's and at the time, you know, it was like 2017. I did my IB program. I was going to go into biomedical engineering. That was my thing. My whole life, it was that. And there's no way that I'm not going to do that. Then I did the IB program, and that really humbled me because it was college level courses at a high school level, but like you still took the same number of subjects. It was insane. So doing bio and physics at that level, I realized, oh, I can't do that and be happy. And then I had this like crisis of what am I going to do?
Your parents were like, no, what are you doing?
Oh my God. I mean, but they like,
no.
Yeah, they were so like, oh, what's okay. And then they saw like the life leave my, like, you know, it was terrible. But it was so hard. I mean, that was 2017. Now it's a lot easier to get into animation, but I'll explain what it was like then. I took a gap year. I tried to do, I'd heard of animation before. I was into Blender. That was a really big thing. And these online communities, which I thought would just be a hobby, but then turned into, oh, this can be a career. And that was the key there. And then there was, you know, the odd YouTube video here and there and learning, oh, these are the schools, oh, Kyle Arts, oh, Sheridan might be, oh, this and this. And then I found Leeds Arts eventually. But right now, I would say for people who are watching this now and want to go into animation, who are people of color, who don't see themselves in animation now, it's a lot better for you. And that has a lot to do with what's happened since 2020 and the pandemic and everything is moving online, and there's like this dissemination of animation, like production. People want to give back. Rise Up Animation, you're going to be looking at, I mean, people like this. I mean, you know, like SABIFF, like this would not happen 3 years ago. We couldn't be doing this. Even if the technology could have been there, we wouldn't be here. So I'd say go online, like talk to people. Rise Up Animation does a great mentorship program where you can sign up as anybody. Like, you know, you could be any age, any point in life, just as long as you're like a minority in any way, you can be apply, and they'll connect you with industry professionals, and you can have one-to-one meetings just like this online. I mean, I know people who have met with Disney legends like Dan Haskett, like the biggest of, like, you know, all these like amazing Disney people who are like in any industry, really, in any studio, and you just have a one-to-one conversation and you're across the world. Now is the best time. So do it. And also make stuff. Making stuff is good.
Yeah.
That would be my advice.
Yeah, I absolutely echo that, Kahenya. I had a similar experience where I wanted to study film when I went out to university in the UK, but my mother was like, hell no, you are going to study business. Who's going to hire you as an African woman with a film degree? It's not happening. Fast forward all these years later, and I'm finding myself back into this space because it's what speaks to me. So I would like to speak to parents and say, don't be afraid for the path that you don't understand. Support your kids if they like to color, draw, write, sing. Support them. Really put an effort into encouraging children to pursue, the arts. Because kids will want things, but then when they're really young, it's the parents who make the decisions, who have the money to say where to go. So for parents watching this, for kids watching this, I really encourage the parents to just take a leap of faith and support the kids in what passions they want to pursue in a really meaningful way.
And I want to say especially African parents, because and Caribbean parents, there is a mindset that the only way you'll make it in this world is to be a doctor, a lawyer, a businessman. And so there is a net that is thrown over the kid's head, and you can't do this. You can't go this direction. So I applaud you all for tearing open that net and finally at this stage in your life, because you're still young, at this stage in your life, and then you have kids. So, making that change and in the direction of what's supposed to be traditionally successing in terms of career development. So that's so what do y'all have any ideas of starting your own platform? Because we have the YouTube as an outlet for international. I know you're doing a lot because you got publishing and you got animation. And so I know there's a lot pulling you in different directions because you're trying to move towards your vision to encompass everything, the content, the products, the books. And so is there anything like a Kweli TV or something like that for you all?
So part of why we named Fye Network is, and it was quite naive of me back then because I was just like, one day we're going to have a TV station and it's going to be, I was thinking Gambia because that's home, right? We're going to have a TV station in Gambia where, the Gambian kids and kids across the continent can turn on that channel and they'll see themselves and stories and see experiences about themselves, names and people and places that they connect with, right? And so, I think down the line, inshallah, it's definitely something we want to do. But for now, it's not. We need that door to open for us to get our first production out there. And I think from there, honestly, the sky's the limit. Limitless, actually, because there is no limit. The sky is limitless for us after that, because my dad always tell us, you just need to get your foot in the door. Once you get the foot in the door, I know you guys got it from there. I don't worry about you. So just focus on getting that foot in the door. So we're trying to really get our foot in the door and knocking on doors and praying that someone gives us the opportunity. It's been a 15-year journey. So we're not stopping now. Some days, like I say, I'll be like, you know what, Kahenya, today I just don't have it in me. I'm gonna need you to just take this and run with it. And he'll be like, all right, I got you. I turn to Manu and Anna, and I'm like, guys, I tap out today. I don't have a story. I don't know what to tell you, but this is it. He's the president. Run with it, right? And they'll run with it. So it's that balancing and the dependability upon each other, I think, really is going to take us places. But yeah, I think eventually. Right now, we just, would love for someone. We're looking for, investors and a production company to come help us bring our idea to life, bring our stories to life, right? We've brought it from idea to book to now we want it to be on the TV screen, so which, African, Caribbean, no matter Asian, white, no matter Caucasian, no matter what your background is, you can resonate with these stories. It's just told from a different perspective, right?
Yeah.
And most importantly, African and African-American kids and kids of the diaspora will see that mirror of themselves reflected back on them from their TV screens.
Well, you all, it has been so wonderful to talk with you. I mean, let me get everybody 4 in a shot. There we go. It's been so wonderful to talk with everybody. And one of the things that is so critical for me with this festival and just with everything I do is the connectivity. Like what you're doing there is so important and so vital. And what we're doing here is important and vital. So let's know each other and connect and try to help each other become stronger.
Absolutely.
And thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for reaching out. When Kahenya told me, I was like, oh my God, wait, what? I want us to talk? Okay.
No, I'm in the same position as you all. This is a small festival. We're trying to grow as well. And so to me, it doesn't matter. I'm not into the whole star-studded thing. To me, it's like I come from a whole Black independent background where it's got guerrilla filmmaking and, people telling you no all the time and you opening another door, going another route. And so you gotta just keep that going because you know your worth, you know your value, you know the importance of seeing your people and your images and your stories on screen. And so you just somehow keep it going. I don't know. So I thank all of you all. I encourage everybody to check out your website and to continue following us here at SABIFF Animation in Black. And we'll be going to another panel soon. So you all take care. I know it's a different time zone, so get your rest.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All righty.
Thank you very much.
Alrighty, thanks.
Enjoy the festival.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.